So since we have some time, I can walk through one of the examples of the field embedding that I did last week. So let me close this and go back to my projects here. So we had a group that they had a survey that they wanted to use. And now let me find the survey real quick and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is a survey that they had, and they wanted to be able to replicate this, or this is a form that they have, and they wanted to be able to replicate this as a survey. And then the second page has a chart with some questions on it. I didn't use the field embedding for the chart. I solved that in a different way, but I felt like it was a good chance to try the field embedding on this design. Because normally what I would do is I would just use Shazam for that. And it's similar, whereas Shazam you have to know the HTML, you have to build the HTML yourself. With the field embedding, you just use the rich text editor and it builds the HTML for you. So with the design that I made, I used the rich text editor, but I also went in and tweaked the HTML because I did some advanced things for the design. So let me go to the design view for this. And this is what it looks like, what I had designed. And so what you would do is in the rich text editor for the form, and also to show you this, let me scroll down. You can see here one of the ones that I'm not using, field embedding. So on any of the fields now in REDCap, it has an icon here, or a link that you can click on that tells you what field embedding is and how to use it. And what it does is it allows you to, instead of having fields that are just one on top of the other, just going down in a list, it allows you to create a more tabular format and put multiple fields together. So you could have these 10 different fed fields, and instead of having just a list of them, you could put them in a table and refer to them. And it's sort of like piping, but instead of the braces, you use the curly brackets. And so this is another example. So if you wanted to make like a demographics form without having it stretch on forever, you can break it up into these little groups here. So in the field embedding that I did here, you can see that this is in a table. And so basically I have a table cell that's 3 across, and then I put the labels in here for myself. But then if I want the first name text box to be there, then I just put first name with the curly braces. And then I just do this for all the fields. And you could just go in here and create your table this way, and it's easy to make the sort of the backbone of what you're going to build, and then slowly start to build it, and then you can tweak as you go. So you want to start out with a table and put your values in, figure out where you want to do it. What I like to do is I like to go into Excel and I try to build sort of like a wireframe of what I want it to look like, and then that gives me a better idea visually what I need to do when I design it. Instead of trying to think about it on the fly, it kind of makes it more tangible for me. And so one of the things I did that's a little more complicated is you can see here that in the table I have 3 columns here, but in the next set I have 2 columns. And in the next set I have 3 columns, but they're different sizes than the first 3 columns. And so what I use is what's called an HTML attribute that's for tables. It's called row span and col span, which is a column span. And it's a way for you to say that I want this field or this table cell to stretch across a certain number of columns. And what I do is I always break my tables up into 20 columns, so that way I can divide them however I want. So this would be 10 columns and 10 columns. And this one here I believe is like 7 and then 8 and then 7, something like that. Or 6, 8, and 6, or 6, 7, and 6. I can't remember what the math was on that. But it allows me to kind of break these fields up however I need to. And then the nice thing is that I could also use a row span. So like you can see here that this last grade completed, it's a check radio buttons. It's a set of radio buttons. And it's a list. And so it allows me to kind of put that and design it to where it fits within that box, and so I can have the race values next to it without it kind of carrying over. And you can see here that it's 3 rows tall. And so what I do is I build this in the rich text editor, and then I go in here and then I make my changes. So you can see here I've added these column spans, and then I go in here and I just tweak these things. I add the styling for the backgrounds and that kind of thing myself, and then I just tweak it to where it looks good and until it's done. And so if we go to so this is how it looks in the design, and if we open up the survey, this is how it looks on the survey. And then the other thing is I didn't use the logo, the logo section in the survey settings that REDCap uses. I decided to put it in the actual field because it looks like it looks more like the form that I was designing from. That it's just not separate, that it's a part of it and it's all together. And you can see here that this is what I was talking about with the last grade completed. It's off to the side, it fits. Same thing with the blood form, the blood test. It allows me to kind of pack it off into the corner and kind of stack these things in like a modular fashion instead of having a bunch of wasted space. And that's really nice with the field embedding, because all you have to do is create your label and your, the rich text editor, and then just pop in the value that you want. Whereas in Shazam, Shazam would basically be this sort of view here. This is what it would be if I had to build it in Shazam. And I would have to build all of this. I'd have to type all this out myself and figure out what exactly I wanted to do. And I would have to build this HTML manually instead of having REDCap do it for me using all of these values and options up here. And then the second survey is just, I didn't use the field embedding for this because it was just a list of questions. But, that's a good example of just how to take something that REDCap is allowing you to use and just sort of bend it to whatever design you need and make it accessible for people. There are some things that I would like to have in the field embedding. I mean, this is a brand new feature, so I'm sure they're going to tweak it. They're probably going to get a lot of feedback from people, because one of the things is with Shazam, you can actually pipe in the label of your field, so you're not having to type them manually. Whereas in the field embedding, I had to put these in manually if I wanted them to stay that way. There might be a way in the field embedding to do that. The other thing is, if you're using the multilingual module, I'm not sure if these labels will toggle back and forth. Like if you have English and Spanish, I don't know if you have English and Spanish, it'll toggle back and forth depending on what language you select. And so there might be a way where you have to figure out how to integrate the multilingual module with the field embedding. And we had somebody the other day talk about wanting to be able to embed PDFs, because I think there's only certain fields that you can embed, and then they wanted to see it, or no, what it was is they have this nice design like this, but whenever they save it to a PDF, it's more of like a flat. It looks more like the REDCap form usually does, and so it doesn't. The design of the field embedding doesn't translate to the PDF, and so they wanted that. But it's one of those things where REDCap or Vanderbilt is putting these things out. They're probably going to get a bunch of feedback, and they're going to update this. I think it's a really nice feature, and you're really you're only limited by your imagination and your knowledge of HTML, really. But I like it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to have to get used to doing it because I've been doing Shazam for so long. So it'll be a nice thing to learn and tinker with.
Awesome. So, anyone have any questions about that? It's a cool new feature and really going to be helpful for those people that are not quite as adept with HTML as Manny is. So I already know people that have started using it in their project. It's hard to miss with that blue text there talking about it on every field. So probably be something that you'll enjoy using. So.
Hey, Terry.
Yeah.
So this is Mary. I just started using this actually last week, and it's fantastic because I was using Shazam, and that was fine, but this is a lot easier. There is no way, as far as I could read, to do logic for specific fields in the table. The logic is for the whole field. Is that correct? Is that the correct interpretation? So if I wanted, the only way that I can make the thing be hidden is I have to do the field logic for the whole field. There's no way I could make like question 2 be hidden inside the table as of right now. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that because I haven't even started using that, but we can research that for you.
Okay. I mean, that's what it sounds like, just reading from the How to Embed a Field Elsewhere link. So, like, for example, if I wanted to hide, like, email address on his thing, it sounds like there's no way to hide that specific field, just how it's written right now. The only thing you can hide is the whole table itself versus not.
So you're saying that action tags don't apply to on a field level basis using this?
I don't think, well, I don't know that. I don't know if you type in hidden, if that will hide it. I'm more thinking of the logic of the email address. That does not work that I could tell.
Yeah,
so
like the
example,
branching logic.
So if there's logic on email address saying like only show if phone number has been entered. I don't think that works. Or I couldn't get it to work. Doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Right.
So yeah, if you guys can look into that and see if that's a thing, that would be great. So I basically redid my whole project using this because it's fantastic. But there's some fields I don't want to show unless another field has been answered a specific way. And as far as I can tell, I can't use the logic with this field embedding.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Shazam does better than this at the moment, because with Shazam you can hide a table row using like branching logic. Like if that field is not visible, then it'll hide the row. And that's one of the reasons why in the second form, the second side of the form here, I didn't use the embedding because they have some fields that hide depending on what you pick. So like if they pick a weight, I have a bunch of weight fields depending on what height you pick because they have different ranges. And I just did it this way because it was easier than trying to figure out how to do it with the field embedding, and I didn't want to have to do it with Shazam. And plus, it didn't really need it because it wasn't a very complex design. Since it was literally just a list of fields, and it could have been that way.
And what I ended up doing is just doing field logic with each of those new tables based off of the response from that certain variable. That starts looking really cluttered in the coding itself. So anyways, if you guys run into that where it's like, it's super easy to do field logic with this new field embedding, that would be fantastic. But if not, I worked around it.
Yeah, I'll look into that. I'll look in the field embedding and see if they offer, or if they talk about it a little more. I'll dig into it a bit.